This morning, we're going to continue with John 5. In the previous parts of John 5, we saw that Jesus healed a man at the pool of Bathsheba, a man that was unable to walk for 38 years. And then through that miracle, Jesus didn't just heal the man, he also had a confrontation with the religious leaders in which he revealed that he doesn't just heal, he gives life, revealing that he's not just a teacher or a prophet, but he's the one who acts with the authority of God, the one who gives life just as the Father gives life. And now, as we move on to the rest of John 5, Jesus continues this confrontation because he is aware that he is making incredible claims about himself. He now needs to provide evidence for his claims, and he does so. He essentially puts himself on trial, calling forward witnesses for himself. And this passage essentially takes place in a courtroom. So we're going to read John 5, verse 31 to 47. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. There is another who bears witness of me, and I know that the witness which he witnesses of me is true. You have sent to John, and he has borne witness to the truth. Yet I do not receive testimony from man, but I say these things that you may be saved. He was the burning and shining lamp, and you were willing for a time to rejoice in his light. But I have a greater witness than John, for the works which the Father has given me to finish. The very works that I do bear witness of me, that the Father has sent me. And the Father himself who sent me has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time nor seen his form. But you do not have his word abiding in you, because whom he sent, him you do not believe. You search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me. But you are not willing to come to me, that you may have life. I do not receive honor from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of God in you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe, who receive honor from one another, and do not seek the honor that comes from the only God? Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is none who accuses you, Moses in whom you trust. There is one who accuses you, Moses in whom you trust. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So Jesus is aware that just making claims about who he is not enough. No one will believe him. And according to Jewish law, similar to today, one has to establish multiple witnesses in a courtroom in order to show that you are what you say you are, such as guilty or innocent. Jesus does not solely rely on his words to justify that his testimony is valid, and to justify that who he says he is who he is. He's using witnesses to say that he's not lying, and showing that he's aware who his audience is. He's aware that they require more than mere words to show them that he is the Son of God. So the first witness he calls to the stand is John the Baptist. John was someone that the people listened to, and they respected him for a time. If you look in Luke 3, you can see how the people came to him asking, "What shall we do then?" responding to him and asking for his advice. Jesus called John as his first witness because as a human witness, he was someone that people could see and rely on in the bodily sense. He was someone they rejoiced in being in his light. The issue is that John was a light that was pointing, not offering light or warmth in himself. He was pointing to Jesus, saying, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." The people did not accept this. They accepted John, but not who he was pointing to. They did not follow where the light was shining. And so the second witness he calls to the stand is his works, his miracles, his healings. He says, "Look at what I'm doing. Don't just listen to my words. Look at the miracles I've performed. Look at the healings. Look at the life I'm giving. This is not normal. It's not just teachings. This is the power of God at work. Many people claimed previously to be the Messiah. They conquered their enemies, and they tried to restore the Jews and Jerusalem to their former glory, I guess. Some examples, and I hope I don't butcher these names, are Simon bar Kokhba, who led a revolt against Rome 100 years after Jesus died. Simon bar Giora was a prominent leader during the First Jewish-Roman War, and he led the Jews also in an uprising against Rome. And there were many others that came throughout the years, but none of them actually cared for the life of the Jews, for their own people. They didn't care about them, not individually as a people. They only cared about their status. None of them could fulfill the prophecy made by Isaiah. So if we turn to Isaiah 35, verse 5 to 6, then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For waters shall burst forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. Does any other person that claimed to be the Messiah do this? Does any other person open the eyes of the blind? Does any other person make the lame leap like deer? No. Jesus is the only one that fulfills this prophecy. And so he calls up his third and fourth witness. Jesus calls up his Father and the Scriptures, and these two go hand in hand. The scary thing about this section is that the people Jesus was talking to, when asked if they knew God, would say, absolutely, of course we know God. They studied God, they talked about God, they lived their lives around God. Every Jewish man knew the Torah cover to cover, and they would have taught their wives and their families it as well. So no one had the excuse to be ignorant. One would think they would know God when he stood right in front of them, but they didn't. And it's very easy for us to say, how could they not? But this is a warning for us as well. We can come to church, do praise and worship, read our Bibles, and yet still not recognize God, even if he stood right in front of us. We need to seriously search our hearts and be honest with ourselves as to whether or not we are truly drawing into a covenant relationship with God. The Bible is not just a book of rules. It's not just history, and it's not just wisdom literature. It is a story that points to a person, and that person is Jesus. We can study the Bible as much as we want, but until that head knowledge turns into heart knowledge about who Jesus truly is and going into a relationship with him, we will never realize that it's him when he walks through the door. So the fifth witness that Jesus calls up is Moses. The people trusted Moses. They built their lives around the laws that he brought down from God. But Jesus says that if you truly believed Moses, you would believe me, because Moses wrote about me. So what does this mean? It means that rejecting Jesus means rejecting the scriptures that point to him. The amazing thing about all the other big religions is that they all try to have a claim to Jesus in some sort of way. The Muslims have a claim to Jesus. The Buddhists have a claim towards Jesus. The Hindus have a claim to Jesus. They all say Jesus is this amazing teacher and prophet. But they all reject the scriptures that point to him. So the courtroom has been laid out. Jesus is on trial. He's called witnesses. And now we have to take a step back. Because ultimately, in this passage, the jury is unconvinced. We see that the Jewish people rejected him. But Jesus gave witnesses. What's the issue? The issue is not the lack of evidence. 5 witnesses is plenty. So the issue is not a lack of evidence, but a problem in the heart. Jesus says, "You refuse to come to me so that you may have life." It is not a matter of they couldn't believe because they had no grounds to stand on, but that they wouldn't believe because they didn't want to. In John 3, Jesus revealed that this would be the way of the world. He says that men love darkness rather than light. They would rather remain in it than allow God to see them for who they truly are and allow Him to change them. So this is where it comes down to us and our own personal choice. Because we are no different to the Jews of that time. We have the scriptures, we have the testimony of witnesses, we have the evidence. We know the stories, we know the truths. But the issue isn't, is there enough evidence? I've watched many apologetic arguments. Me and Lode were just talking about it this morning. And there's a lot of times that those who argue against Christianity know the facts. They know the Bible cover to cover, sometimes better than Christians themselves. But they are so hard of heart that no matter how much evidence they are shown, they will not believe. The issue is of the heart. As I said, it's turning head knowledge into heart knowledge. It's trusting Him and following Him. And I know that isn't easy. I was reminded of the analogy of faith and the chair. How we should put our faith in God the way we put our faith in a chair when we sit down on it. And for some reason, when I heard that analogy again, something didn't sit quite well with me when I heard it. It felt a little bit off. And I think the issue that I found was that we can rely on what we see with our eyes when we look at the chair. We can see that it's solid. And we can see other people sitting in similar chairs and see that it doesn't collapse under them. We know from our past experiences that it won't collapse. But the thing about faith is that it doesn't always work like that. It says in Romans 4, verse 18 to 21, that Abraham believed in hope against hope. That despite him being 100 years old and Sarah being barren, that God would make him the father of all nations. No one sat in a chair and said, hope against hope, this thing keeps me up. Hope against hope is like, this thing will never happen. When I sit in this chair, this thing will collapse under me 100%. I believe 100% that this chair will collapse under me. That's what hope against hope is. No one ever said that when they sat in a chair. Because with a chair, we trust it because we can see it. We've tested it. We've experienced it. But with Jesus, we are called to trust Him before we fully see, and we place our entire lives in His hands. The people in John 5, they had the evidence, they had the witnesses, they had the scriptures, they had the miracles, and yet they still refused to sit in the chair. And sometimes we can do the same thing. We know everything about Jesus. We can understand the arguments, we can agree with the facts, but still never actually place our weight on Him. Faith is not just knowing the chair can hold you, it's actually sitting down. Jesus says, He gives life, but that life is not experienced until we actually trust Him. So the question is not, is there enough evidence? The question is, have you actually trusted Him? Have you actually placed your life in His hands? Are you still standing, knowing He's there, but refusing to sit? So the courtroom's laid out, the witnesses have spoken, the evidence is there.